You're tuned to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is the program called Instant Zone, peak performance every day. It's our pleasure, as always, to have in the studio Edmond Otis. How you going, Edmond?
Oh, I'm good, Ken. Good to see you. Feels like I was just here.
Seems like only moments ago we were speaking. Here we are, another month has gone. Can you believe it?
That Einstein was a smart guy.
Was he? What? I think that's also a sign of getting old, don't you? That the years just go like that. Is that a sign of getting old or not?
A friend of mine who was actually much older than me, a mathematician, made it even more depressing. He points out that when you're 10, a year is 1/10 of your life.
Yeah.
When you're 50, it's 1/50 of your life. So literally, it is going faster.
I mean, you're almost a medical practitioner, a psychological practitioner. I was talking on the breakfast show this morning, and I sort of made the observation: is what is old? What's old from your point of view?
Oh yeah, there's a theory about that. There's this guy named psychosocial Kohlberg. There's a theory called the psychosocial stages of development, and he says there's 6 stages of development. I love this theory, and he says the final stage is old age. And when you look at it and think about it, now it's way different. I mean, how we are is way different than our parents were at this age, right? Someone who's 50 now is way different than 50-year-olds were 100 years ago for a variety of reasons. And I think old age is simply the point where the next thing you look forward to is dying. Literally.
Yeah.
I mean, you've said to yourself, well, I've done it all. I'm here. I'm just going to wait. For some people, that does happen when you're 60. For some people, that doesn't happen when they're 90. Now sometimes, illness can bring it on.
Sure.
Then he also talks about the fact that when you're at that stage, you either reach that stage with a sense of well-being or regret. I think it's almost old age is also the stage where you really can't apologize and change what's gone on. You're stuck with that.
So listen to what you're saying. Could really be considered. You could consider yourself to be old when you're 40.
Absolutely.
How do you get into someone's head and change that?
Well, they have to, I'm a big believer that to help somebody change what's in their head, they have to want it to change. This stuff hardly ever works. We learn an awful lot from organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Anybody can change, but it's really difficult to do it externally.
There is another saying, of course, that a leopard never changes his spots. Is that?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I think people have different personalities. Some people are more optimistic. Some people are more pessimistic. I think that changes, but I think we have the capability to change our own spots. And I've seen numerous examples of that. People go along, they go, I'm just not happy with this. I'm working hard or I'm not working hard. I don't like what I feel about myself. I'm going to do something differently. But it always, I see myself and people like me, we can be effective to help people do that. We're coaches. Coaches help people achieve what they want to achieve.
It must be much harder for an optimist to look on the dark side than what it would be for a pessimist to look on the bright side. Do you find that in your industry? That's
absolutely.
The case?
Yeah. Well, I think optimists look at what pessimists think and it just makes them laugh.
Yeah.
For God's sake. And pessimists look at optimists and go, clearly there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Really interesting, as long as you're talking about old age and longevity. They used to, I don't know, in New Zealand, do we use the phrase type A personality? Not too much. In the U.S., there's a phrase called type A personality. It means someone who's always driven, always directed, working really hard, always aggressive, always trying to achieve results. Typically American, right? As we would think of here. And they used to say that leads to heart attack. And it turns out that's not the truth. There is one specific personality trait that significantly is related to early death and heart disease and high blood pressure and all that. And that trait is pessimism. That's really interesting. Okay, and I believe you can change that. And the reasoning behind that is it has to do, I believe it has to do with brain chemistry. If you're under a lot of stress, you kind of fluctuate between fight or flight all the time, right? So that releases hormones in your brain, and you're always activating that, and you're trying to put that aside. A pessimist, right? Every time the phone buzzes, they go, damn, who's that? Someone knocks on the door. Oh, no, who's that? Phone rings. They go, what's that? Optimist goes, oh, who's there?
Yeah, of course.
Right, so that's interesting. But that's the number one trait that is directly related to heart disease and early death.
What's the downside to being an overachiever, an alpha male or an alpha female? Is there a downside? I mean, do those people want to be the best at all costs? Is that a downside to it?
I think sometimes it's paradoxical. I think sometimes people who describe themselves or think of themselves as overachievers are just purposely setting themselves up to failure. Some people are never satisfied.
Yeah.
I think the best achievers are people who, they do the best they can, they try as hard, they see what they want, but ultimately because they've given it their best, they cut themselves some slack and they're satisfied with what they have. Being satisfied with your efforts is a gift. But you can't fool yourself. So there's a series of paradoxes there.
Sure. Last month we talked about something similar. I mean, being satisfied, not with your lot in life, but being satisfied, is that a good thing? Or should you always be a bit more hungry than being satisfied?
God, I don't know. You always do this. I think it's important to be happy with what you have. So you have a sense of well-being, and at the same time, it's important to recognize that you can achieve more if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Everybody is meant to go to the front of the line. I think what's important is having a sense of well-being. Feeling that you have the life that you want, and you're doing what you can with your skills to be as happy as you can, as productive. Now, saying that, we know that happiness is kind of a tricky, slippery slope kind of thing. People tend to be happier if they feel that what they do has purpose.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what they do, but if they feel they get up in the day and they contribute, or they have a sense of purpose for what they do, they tend to be much happier.
Sure.
That's important.
Yeah. Now today we sort of got a bit off track. I can't understand how that would have happened.
Us?
But
Unbelievable.
But today you're going to talk about how people think and do what they think and do to perform at their peak. Are you meaning all the time, or just at the time when they need to do that?
When they need to. Here's what I thought we might talk about. There's a ton of research out there. If you look at the way resilient people cope with problems compared to the way people who are not resilient cope with problems, if you look at the way competitors deal with issues compared to people who aren't competitors, if you look at people who deal with stress, and there's all different factors. There's what happens to you emotionally, there's what happens to you mentally. But what I thought we would do today, or I'd like to do, is talk about 3 different specific methods that people who perform well use to think about the problems they face in order to solve those problems. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. And there's a lot of different ways of talking about it, but these are kind of the 3 methods that I use with my people. Now, it isn't everything. It's what we call cognitive strategies. Yeah. One of the things about sports psychology, in the big picture is, I don't know if people think about this, but sports psychology didn't start because a bunch of little tiny, geeky psychologists sat in a room and go, I know, if we image, we will do better. What happens, but the industry looked at successful athletes, and they looked at hundreds of thousands of athletes. And it turns out that certain athletes, and it also applies to business people, applies to parents who are happy, applies to all kinds of things, certain people who are successful approach problems in a fairly consistent way. And so then, the thinking is, well, if they're doing that, maybe we can do that.
Yeah.
That's why, teams look at sports, teams look at other teams' sports tapes. What are they doing? Maybe we can do that.
I wonder, that's a good point that you raise, a natural performer, someone who doesn't necessarily need to think about what they're doing because they're just good at what they do.
Yeah.
How do you get the person that you've had to teach to perform to think like they do?
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. The natural performer, these methods are the ways they naturally think.
Yeah, but the guy that you've got to say, look, when we talked about it last month, you got to see some guy and you say, okay, well, if you could do this, what would you do?
Exactly.
He's got to think about it, and then he might be thinking, okay, well, he's always got to be thinking about it, whereas the other guys...
Until you learn it. It's like learning any skill, right? It's like learning to drive. You have to think about it at first. Right, somebody who knows how to drive drives naturally. If you remember first learning to drive, where's the brake, where's the gas, do I have a clutch, what do I do with the turn signal? So in learning any new skill, but exactly right, what you'd look at is you look at the people who are the most successful, who do this thing naturally. And then we say to ourselves, well, if we could do that, we would be as successful also.
Possibly wasn't a good analogy there, because some of the driving that I see on the road every day, they haven't learned to drive properly.
It's pretty bad.
They've been doing it for 20 years. So it can work like that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, my feeling is that's the way it has to work.
Yeah.
So the system I use might be called, it's a efficacy-based system, which means you learn skills and you develop confidence in your skills, and those skills applied to the environment, right? So there's a bunch of different ways of looking at it, but 3 ways that we look at it. One is what we call sport think, and we talked about this a little bit in the last show. It's the way coaches work. Any coach we know, any sport we know, any mentor we know, we use business coaching and all that. We have 4 things that we look at. Okay, we look at your thoughts. What do you think about the problem? We look at your emotions. What are you feeling as you deal with the problem? We look about your relationships. Who are you interacting with, and how does that affect you? And we look at your actual behaviors. Mm-hmm. So one of the methods we use is, if you're in a situation where you want to do better, let's say you're a manager, or let's say you have a teenager and you're having a hard time with, or let's say you're a teacher and you want to do better teaching. So I might say to myself, okay, what should I think in dealing with this situation? Or what should I do? If I was really confident now, and I really felt right, and I knew what to do, and I was really confident and competent, what would I do? Then we say, let's do that. Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised. People are really, really, and your listeners can check this. People, once they get past the fact that they're overwhelmed, they know what they should do if they were able to do it. They say to themselves, if I was more confident, I would do this. If I was a better parent, I would do that. Mm-hmm. If I was a better manager, I would do that. So what I try to do is I try to take that middle point out, and then we just say, well, why don't we try doing that? Mm. Literally do that. Like your business. If I was... I'm sure at some point, the first time you sat behind a microphone, you must have gone, oh man, what the hell? And then you said, well, I know what the other guys do. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, blindingly simple, but it works well all the time.
That's an interesting point that you make about my job, because when I turn the microphone on every morning, I wouldn't say I was nervous, but it's sort of like a bit of nervous energy. And I think that's a great thing, because there's 2 ways to look at doing your shows. When you pre-record the show, then if you make a mistake, you can say, oh, well, I'm going to go back and fix that. Yeah. Whereas when you go live, like we're talking now, it's what it is.
It's what it is.
And you feel better about it in yourself, actually. Yeah. Is that how you find it works with performance athletes? And it's just what it is, what happens on the day.
Just people. I think we mentioned last time, I think one of my main goals, when you look at the best athletes or the best performers, it isn't, and you and I kind of have a slight little disagreement, it isn't really about deciding to win. It's about deciding to take a risk, attempting to win, do your best. This is all about that. The first time I sat down here, I'm reasonably good at talking, at least I think I am. I just talk, I don't care too much. I think people either understand you or they don't. But you take a risk. And what you do undoubtedly, and what I do when I teach or I seminar or when I used to compete or when I teach karate, is you have a lot of skill set. You know how this all works. You prepare yourself as best you can. But the best performers, I feel, are able to use that as a foundation. And then as a basis, they're able to improvise.
Do you worry that people might be of that ilk, that they think, what's that guy talking about, that you're not getting your message across, or would you cut those sort of guys loose?
I just do the best I can.
Yeah.
I don't know. If somebody says I don't get it, I'm more than willing to talk about it. If somebody says that doesn't make any sense, I'm willing to defend it. It happens, right? You can't please everybody. But again, what I'm looking at and what I'm the most interested in is that level of spontaneity, because that's what performance is. And that's even true in an environment that's absolutely stable. There's a reason that every time you go out to bowl, for example, it's a little bit different. It's a reason throwing darts is different. It's a reason there's competition. Everything changes. But I think what we're looking at and what I'm interested in, the method I just talked about right now, is what people really want to do is people want to be able to, not foolhardily, but you're taking a risk. You're trying your best. That means you're not sure what the outcome is going to be. That's fascinating.
It is fascinating. I wonder whether or not, though, the average athlete, and maybe even some top performers, they're not thinking about any of this stuff that you're talking about. They turn up, they get on the field, the track, the shooting range, they do it. They're not thinking, I'm woken up this morning, am I in the right frame of mind? They get out of bed, they come down, go home.
Oh,
is that what happens or not?
No, I kind of disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think if you just go out there and play and have fun, you do that. But there's nobody in the world. If you're competing, you don't say to yourself, "Oh," even if you say it's no big deal. That's a method of preparing.
Yeah, but what about these natural athletes that are so good that they?
But they're competing against other. If you think of any sporting event, if you look at, and right before the game is going to start, whether it's New Zealand, we're doing the national anthem, whether it's some other sport they're coming up. If you look at their faces, all of them are saying to themselves, are doing what they need to get ready, and get ready means they want to be at their best. Or else they're saying to themselves, am I going to be at my best? It's a delicate balance. right? Anytime you're, now, again, part of it, though, is not caring too much. I often say that doing your best is not the same as trying as hard as you can. It's being relaxed enough to let it happen. But I don't believe that's true. I think a little bit, you give it some thought before you get it, because you want each show to go well.
Sure.
So a little bit, you do what you need to do to prepare. Okay, emotionally or mentally, it's a little bit. You've done this a lot. I mean, nobody's holding a gun to your head, so there's not that much risk. But I think as the environment becomes greater, whether you're in business or you're a manager, you want to be able to do your best. And so the best performance, just as I talked about, they decide. They think about what they need to think about. That's called psyching up or getting ready. That's why most athletes have a ritual. Most people have a ritual. What they do to do their best at a certain amount of time. But I think the best athletes don't worry about it too much.
Yeah.
Because worrying is different than preparing.
Sure. I guess that as an example, Cassius Clay, you must remember him. I can't imagine he would have ever stepped into the ring with any thought other than he was going to win.
Absolutely.
And I think that was his advantage, that he probably then put the other guy in the think, oh my God, I'm going to lose here.
Yeah.
Is that what would happen?
Yeah, I think to a point. And then Cassius Clay was one of the first, overtly sports psychologists out there.
Yeah.
Not only did he convince himself he was going to win, he convinced the other guy he was going to win.
Would he have seen a sports psychologist, or was that just the way he was?
But again, when I work with coaches and I work with people, we're all sports psychologists. Everybody's a psychologist. I mean, psychology is a study of human behavior. Now, theoretically, and some psychologists get into it for really weird reasons, right? Okay, everybody's a psychologist. When you're 10 years old and you go ask your mom to borrow $1 and you ask her differently than you would ask your dad, just slightly, that's psychology. Okay, if you're in high school and you have to take an extension on a paper and you're a little bit nervous, but you ask one teacher differently than you ask another one, you're using psychology. If you see some girl you like and you ask her out for a date and you've tried 2 different girls and you've asked them differently, slightly, that's psychology. Because what you're doing is you're making an assumption. You create a hypothesis, and then you kind of roll out there.
Yeah.
Everybody's a psychologist. It's how do you prepare yourself to do what you want to do.
Good examples, and I suppose in those particular instances that we do better thinking about it, but in our daily life, how often should we be thinking that way? We should be doing it every day.
I think some people are really, really good at emotionally preparing themselves. If you look how people prepare, I'm not sure what type you are, but I'm sure everybody prepares a little bit. Some people have a list of things they write out, a list of things to do for the day. Some people listen to a certain kind of music. Some people go through a physical ritual. Some people call somebody up or have coffee with somebody. To prepare for the day, I always like to talk to my mates on the phone, or I always write up a list of things to do. Okay, I always listen to music coming in. There's 3 different avenues we use to prepare ourselves. Everybody does something to get themselves in the right balance. My job is try to help people figure out what's going to work best. Because at the same way, a lot of people do the exact thing that makes them feel the worst. Okay? Instead of preparing themselves, people create more anxiety for themselves.
That's funny that you should say that, because I think people who prepare like that, and it's just my personal opinion, of course, I think they're weird. Somebody comes in and has got to go for a ritual, it's like, Is that weird or not?
Oh no, I only care about outcomes. No, I care about outcomes. If that works for them, I'm delighted.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work for them, I think they should change it. But again, everybody has a ritual.
Is it? Do they? I mean, do you not think some of the rituals that you come across there, you think, my God, you wouldn't say it obviously because it's, that's your job not to say it, I suppose, but just off the record between you and me. Do you find it's a bit weird?
No, I don't care. The only thing I care about in life, I guess, is outcomes. If what they do helps them achieve what they want to achieve, I'm fine with it.
Of course.
I don't care. Everybody has a little different thing.
Yeah.
Even the people who say, I have no ritual, I just wing it.
Yeah.
And they come in and they tell jokes and they think about it and they do all this stuff and they're silly all the way up to the front. That's their ritual.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do to prepare yourself. Again, for me, whatever you can do to prepare yourself to be spontaneous.
Yeah, or they say touch wood.
Touch wood.
I guess it's a ritual, isn't it?
Something.
So preparing to perform at your peak, how important is that?
I think it's crucial. And I think it's about finding yourself. Like I said, there's one method. Some people are really, really good at, for me, one of the attributes I like best, and I see this with all types of people in spontaneous situations, is the attribute what I call having a GPS in your brain. Mm-hmm. If you think about how a GPS works, it's triangulation and all that. But a GPS literally doesn't tell you where to go. A GPS literally tells you what to do next. That's a fabulous skill. People are really good performers. At a moment of stress, overwhelmed, they are really good at figuring out or knowing literally what to do next. You know, the athlete running down the field, he knows whether to turn left or right. The salesman knows exactly what to say. You know, so you have this long-term outcome. But one of the things we see is that people are able to control their stress and control their emotions and use all that energy and tweak it enough so at the moment it happens, they're really able to, it comes to them, this is what I do next.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, if I have a GPS and I want to go see my son in Wellington, GPS doesn't go, oh, it's pretty far.
That's right.
GPS says go to the corner and turn left.
Yep.
Right? And if I go to the corner and turn right, GPS doesn't call me bad names. GPS doesn't says, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I'm not going to help you anymore. GPS just says, at the roundabout, turn around. It doesn't care. I think that's an important attribute. It's this kind of combination between, you know, she'll be right and harden up, cutting yourself enough slack, but yet giving yourself the benefit of the doubt.
Do you find that people that come and see you, they're sort of halfway there because of the mere fact that they've come to see
absolutely.
you?
Yeah.
Whereas you might go and talk to a group of people and you probably can tell straight off by looking at them who is going to actually take notice of you and who is not, because it's all very well to turn up to a gig where there might be 60 or 70 people listening to you, motivate them, but when they get home, it's that maybe that half dozen might say, yeah, that guy had a point.
Yeah. I'm
I'm either going to talk to him some more or I'm going to put that into action, but it's sort of seeing and doing, isn't it?
Yeah, everybody isn't for everybody. You know, I see myself, you know, regardless of who I'm working with, I see myself as a coach, which means a coach is someone who's there to help you achieve your desired goal. That's why the big teams hire and fire coaches all the time.
Sure.
We're looking for someone different. You know, as much as anything, and other psychologists hate when I say this, you know, being effective at this is as much voodoo as anything else. I mean, I know professional coaches and I know professional managers and I know teachers who do everything right. You know, but they couldn't coach a dog to chew on a bone.
Yeah.
And I know people who seem to do everything wrong, but their teams win and their athletes love them. Their salespeople do this. Their people are happy. So a lot of it is voodoo in a sense that it helps people feel their own power.
Yeah.
You know, which sounds pretty, you know, artsy-fartsy, but it's true. It's feeling your own power that's important.
And I suppose that's just another way of saying there's different peaks. I mean, the guy who's just cruising along, doesn't want to put himself out, he's achieving his peak all the time, isn't he?
Absolutely.
Whereas the guy who wants to come and see you, his peak's not high enough. He wants to go for it.
He wants to do more. He wants to get some, or he wants to quit worrying about it. He just wants to enjoy what he has.
Yeah.
I mean, I work with lots of people who, you know, externally, you know, you look at them, incredibly successful. But for God's sake, they just can't enjoy it. And they know there's something wrong with it. You know, so I think that's important. You know, being able to enjoy what you have is vital. Being able to find pleasure and a little bit of happiness every day without it making a big deal is an incredibly positive attribute.
Would you suggest that people put time aside? I mean, even very successful people, would you suggest to them, hey, look, take an hour off every day, enjoy it?
Oh, absolutely. And what you'll notice is really successful people often do that. Absolutely. You need to do something where, you know, this whole thing about instant zone, the title of all this, you know, when you're in the zone, it comes from an old theory that came out of the 60s and 70s, behavioral psychology. It's about flow, right? And it's what we're looking at now as far as mindfulness. Everybody needs a point in time where things are okay and they're just content with what they have. Okay, that's how we rest. Right? That's how we rest. And to be, you know, regardless of what you're doing, if you're always under the gun, you're never functioning as well as you can. So absolutely, everybody should, even an hour may be too much. But, you know, I admire the people who are able to walk, you know, able to drive to work, and they look out the window, what a gorgeous sunrise. Yeah. And you notice I said they were driving to work at sunrise.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's what I do. Actually, I think that in the last year or so, I've become more aware of mindfulness. Whereas, you know, sometimes you get in the car and you think, geez, I'm at work. How did I get here?
Yeah.
You just sort of got here on, you know, autopilot. But it doesn't take much to be mindful of the good things.
No, the good things, you know, and mindfulness is kind of tricky. It's kind of paradoxical. You know, part of mindfulness is accepting how you are. Some people are just naturally more stressed than others, you know, have a higher base stress level, you know, and a lot of mindfulness is just accepting the fact, I'm really upset about this, and that's okay because that's the way I am. You know, and it's weird, it's paradoxical, but it's true. But being able to not feel an urgency or not, you know, run towards something or away from something. I mean, I don't think you can do that all day long.
No, of course not.
But finding some time where it feels good. And for you, To be honest, I bet like doing this show feels like that sometimes.
Oh, I love it.
Right? You know, you're comfortable, it's happening, you enjoy it. You look at the clock, you know, I have 2 minutes, I have another 30 seconds, I can do this. You know, an amateur goes, 30 seconds, or how am I gonna fill the next 5 minutes, I imagine. I mean, I don't know your business.
Indeed.
But it's all that, you know, it's do you find comfort and peace in what you're doing? And
on that, as always, our pleasure to talk to you. If we want to come and see you to talk about anything we've talked about today, how do we do that?
Easiest is phone number is 021-275-0226, or I have a website, Edmond, at edmond.otis.
Edmond, as always, our pleasure. Look after yourself. Talk to you same time, same place next time.
Absolutely, Ken. Thank you.